All right, so today I'm joined by someone that I know well. His name is Anthony Wheeler, my oldest son. And so thank you, Anthony, for taking some time out of your day to share your own Salesforce journey with me.
Yeah, glad to be here. Glad to talk.
It's kind of weird. You can call me Dad, you can call me Mike, whatever. I can call you son or Anthony or Means or whatever. So
Sounds
yeah,
good,
this kind
Dad.
of there you go. So this is an honor for me because, you know, of course, I've known you since the day you were born and watched you grow up into a fine young man and a Salesforce professional as well. And as a father, I've never subscribed to the idea of forcing my kids to be like their father, but finding what they're good at and then just helping encouraging them in that direction. So when I think back to your first professional forays or projects that you've worked on with me, this really predates Salesforce. And so I want to rewind to about 2009 or 2010, whenever I was out there selling Snuggies online as an affiliate marketer. And so can you, from your own perspective, as a very young man slash young child at that time, you're probably an early teenager. I think the first projects I had you work on had to do with video editing, putting together some videos related to the Snuggie. What was your perspective during that time, and what did you learn from all
Hmm. I'm going to really go back here.
that? Learn your dad is crazy.
Well, I do. I do think it did legitimize for me at an early age how you can really make money doing anything. So you don't necessarily have to go in doing a traditional 9 to 5 job. There's lots of ways to make money online and do all sorts of other things as well. And definitely learned a lot from you at the time around some of which makes more sense now that I'm older, but just about affiliate marketing and just we weren't full on doing web development, but how to make websites and how hosting and all that works. Just a bunch of little pieces that kind of help build a foundation for where I am today, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, I think this has been, I guess, 11, 12 years ago. So you're very young
Yeah.
at the time. And I know you didn't really understand why I was having you put together like music videos and slideshows and all that. And a lot of it was about just finding what you were good at and what you weren't good at. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you early on were doing a lot of video editing. And now, fast forward to current day, you're a Salesforce developer. And your brother, Aaron, who's son number 2 in the Wheeler household. And for those watching at home that don't know our family story, we have 6 sons and then finally a daughter. And so Anthony's the oldest, the firstborn, and then Aaron is a video editor, secondborn. And so at some point, we started to figure out that you were probably more technical and not so much artistic as far as video editing goes. And so I think your first foray with development would be traced back to learning Scratch. Is that where it started for you?
Yes, we had a local friend who taught kind of an intro to development class at Vanderbilt University. Who was kind enough to teach me and some of our local friends at our homeschool co-op that he got us into kind of an introduction to development by doing Scratch development, which for those who don't know about Scratch, it's just a simple GUI editor interface that allows you to drag and drop different blocks and simulate object-oriented development with different sprites and the GUI interface to do all your scripts and everything. So it teaches a lot of the kind of foundational concepts with software development.
Okay.
For kids.
Yeah, I found Scratch fascinating as an adult, kind of watching what you would do and your brothers were doing on that platform, as far as it being drag and drop and WYSIWYG and very visual to convey object-oriented principles. And so then after that, I know that the next step for you was learning some Java as far as some Java principles. And so I'm kind of leading up to, you know, talking about your own journey, but how that played into you finding your way into Salesforce. So learning Java, how closely or not so closely does that align with what you're doing now with Apex and Salesforce development?
Yeah, so Java is actually the same person who taught us Scratch, ended up teaching some of us, going like the next step and teaching us Intro to Java. And a lot of that lines up it's almost identical to Salesforce outside of a few keywords, and then obviously some more of the CRM database type concepts. So it was really helpful to know Java going into Salesforce, because then I was able to kind of just teach myself, just go look up how to do certain things in Apex, and then just anytime you just run into a syntax error, just fix the syntax error. You go, this is not the same as Apex. This is not the same as Java. This is how you would do this in Apex. So pretty much almost identical. Just there's a couple small keyword changes.
All right. So I've seen people out there like David Liu of SFDC 99 fame, who's more on the development side. I'm more known for teaching admins and beginners on how to learn the fundamentals of the platform. David is someone that really is teaching people how to code. And he has mentioned and has suggested that people learn Java in order to learn Apex. So from your perspective, would you recommend that people learn Java before learning Apex, or just diving into Apex and trying to learn it all from there? There's no right or wrong answer, just what, if you had it to do over again as an adult now, what would you attempt?
If I were to do it over again, I would probably have gotten a little bit more familiar with object-oriented development outside of Salesforce first, just because you become a little bit more familiar with a lot of the best practices and can look back on your code and not cringe so hard at some of the things you were doing. But also just learning that, I feel like it took me a little bit longer to kind of get a better idea of how object-oriented development works outside of Salesforce, starting so early with development, primarily in Salesforce. So what I mean by that is if you have a better foundation with just traditional object-oriented development outside of Salesforce, and then learning Salesforce and database type development, then you can bring the two together a little bit more quickly and easily, I feel like, and have a better foundation for each of those individually.
Okay, so let's fast forward to modern times of what you're working on now, because I know your story, but you are called upon to do some pretty complex things on the Salesforce platform, but also have to deal with other systems as well. So can you speak to, at a very high level, don't get too in the weeds or too proprietary in this answer, but can you talk about some of the scenarios you've been tasked with that have called upon things outside of Salesforce and how that integrates with Salesforce as well?
Yeah, so I've done a lot with reaching out to external services from Salesforce. So doing a lot with just different types of integration development. And one of the earliest examples is helping you out with getting a system up to where we can keep track of your sales and reviews and students and things like that. So getting that integration set up so you don't have to think about that, and then you can report and dashboard off that as needed. And then I've done some other things with doing some different metadata API type projects with Python, and doing those kind of externally to call different Salesforce orgs. And then as far as what I'm working on right now, I know I'm working on a project where we're trying to integrate with an on-premise database and get to where the users can access that from within Salesforce. So that's something that we're working on right now.
Okay. Yeah, I know that you've worked on a lot of different things, and I had kind of forgotten about some of your early work with some of the needs that arose from my getting into Salesforce training. And so the integrations were with specifically the Udemy platform. I know that they had an API that would hook in for their ratings and reviews, which was something that I followed very closely early on. And it just grew, and the scale got to where I wasn't able to keep up with it all. But early on, that was very instrumental. And I think my success is the work that you did behind the scenes. I think it's important for people to realize that as well. But then a lot of times, the way that I find that people can gain experience is just by going out there and trying something new and then figuring out some specific use case that they have to tackle. So it was kind of interesting watching your own development and your own career, because you were kind of, for a time, kind of my secret weapon and behind the scenes, and no one knew about you. But I
Yes.
remember whenever you started landing your own jobs as far as on your own skills and ability. And can you talk more about what that experience was like as far as interviewing, building out a resume, as a young person without college? And I guess I should say as well that as we were approaching your high school graduation time, we decided to explore kind of collectively doing a gap year and seeing how it shook out for you. And I think it shook out very nicely. And I think you would probably agree with that. But the idea of talking to you is not so much, hey, here's Mike Wheeler's son, Anthony, but more, what were some of the challenges that you faced as a young person without a college experience, without a lot of business experience, in getting people to trust that you do have the experience, you do have the ability. What were some of those challenges? How did you overcome those?
So my first gig, I actually, the one that I started with you, was a little bit, I guess you could say, easier to get, because I kind of had you vouching for me and helping me get my foot in the door. That contract lasted for a year and a half, and that was all fine and dandy. But then when that all wrapped up and they were kind of wrapping up all their Salesforce projects, it was probably a 4-month or so gap before I was able to get another contract. And I believe I think it was 19 at the time, maybe. Yeah. So it was a little bit more of a challenge going off on my own and trying to convince people that I could still do the development that they wanted. And companies are often looking for two different types of developers sometimes. Sometimes companies are wanting someone who is more of an overall architectural type mind and knows how to consult a little bit more and provide different options for solutions, and able to kind of step up and say when something can be done better and all that. And then sometimes they already have that role fulfilled and they just need someone to just come in and code and do as they're asked. So early on, I didn't know it at the time, but that's kind of more the role I was looking for. And then I eventually did end up finding a few months after my first gig. I was with that gig for a couple months and worked with several other contract developers doing some work. And then that one ended up going away because that company ended up going with a consulting company instead of hiring on a bunch of contractors. And then worked as another contract job for a year, and a little bit more of a developer / consulting / architectural type role. Not that I had gotten a little bit more experience under my belt and was able to speak a little bit more to some of the best practices and recommend different types of Salesforce solutions based on the business needs. So this went on for a while, kind of jumping from contract to contract. And then finally, I'm currently with my first real full-time role. I'd kind of had some minor, I kind of had one other full-time role that I was a part of that didn't last very long, and they ended up not really needing a full-time developer, it turned out. But my first real full-time role as a real legitimate developer, and I'm kind of now to the point where I have enough experience where I'm able to provide legitimate, I guess, expertise, if you will, on different development solutions and kind of gauging different business needs and planning that out. And it's definitely come in handy with this role. With this role, I'm taking one Salesforce org with a bunch of business units and splitting them up into multiple business units, splitting them up into multiple Salesforce orgs where each business unit has their own Salesforce org. So it's definitely something where I'm having to assess the product that they have in place right now and assess where they need to be and be able to take it apart and utilize all the tools that Salesforce provides to make it as long-term of a solution as possible, and make sure I'm, documenting everything thoroughly and using everything that Salesforce provides and trying to make it as easily configurable in the future long-term as possible. Because that's the problem, was they had all these business units coming in together and they were stepping on each other's toes, and they couldn't get different things done because there was a certain something set up for one business unit that would interfere with the other business unit, and they couldn't take that away because it was a actual requirement for this first business unit. So just trying to make sure that it's long term in the future that this doesn't become an issue has been kind of the main focus, and just really getting in there and meeting with the different business units and teams, trying to make sure that everything is exactly how they want it, but also really assessing different asks and seeing what their viability is long term for the business and how it will affect the Salesforce org moving forward into the future.
Awesome. So I know, when you started out, your first gig that you had where you were known was with the pharmaceutical company, because that was a project that we worked on together. I was with this company as a contractor for about 6 months. And then at some point, an instant message came in asking if you were available, because I had started to tout your abilities. And so we actually landed that for you through instant message. So that one did, I guess, come easily, but you've definitely grown in your abilities. And I think as well, and this is universal across those that start out younger without the business experience, is that you can learn the concepts, you can gain the certifications, but really understanding the business processes is something that you've got to just get in there and learn on the job. And so for some of those other contract positions, and there were some gaps there, but I think that in the end, looking back, it was a good experience because from what I know of your journey, I know that there were times, I remember hearing about you working with CPQ type things at times as far as configure, price, quote. What were some of the other industries that you've worked in besides healthcare?
So one of the other companies I had a contract for was for a pretty big aerospace company that had a bunch of support cloud functionality that they had set up that I helped configure for them. I also worked for a sales company in Nashville that was a bit smaller, and this is the company I mentioned earlier that ended up not really needing a full-time developer, but helps them get some kind of just get a little bit more automation and configuration in there for them so they could get some more, just kind of keep their sales process going and keep just on the ball.
Okay, so knowing your story a little bit and refreshing my memory by looking at your LinkedIn profile, I know that in addition to pharmaceutical and healthcare, you've dealt with aerospace, you've dealt with some manufacturing companies, government contracts. And so that's giving you a wealth of and a breadth of experience on the platform, both sales and service cloud. But rewinding a little bit to when you were first pursuing that first certification, what was that experience like, and what was that first certification for you?
Yeah, so I first got certified on the original Dev 401, which is now the Platform App Builder certification. You mentioned earlier that I was taking a gap year. So that first summer after graduating, I pretty much spent the whole summer just studying for this certification and just studying different Salesforce functionality and things like that, and trying to get my head around the platform and how it would work in a business. So I remember finally taking the test in September of 2015 and failing it the first time, and then taking it 3 days later and passing. And I remember when I failed it the first time, we did a big brain dump on the whiteboard, and I didn't think I would remember very many questions, and he kept asking me questions, and I'd be like, okay, oh yeah, I remember that. There was, and I think I was able to remember like 40 out of the 60 questions or something.
Yep.
Something crazy. I really did not realize how much I would remember, but yeah, it was like 11 at night, and I just wanted to go to bed. But yeah, but we got it done, and then the whole next 3 days, I just kept looking those specific questions up that we had written down and trying to find the solution to those. And a lot of them ended up coming back up in the second round, and I think that's definitely what allowed me to be able to pass it the second time.
Right. Yeah, I remember when you failed the first time, and I failed with my first exam as well. And that whole idea of a brain dump, and I've talked about this in some of my classes and some of my webinars, so I won't go into all that right now, but I knew that you didn't want to do it. But in the end, I wish we would have recorded that session, because there was so much coming out of your brain that you could remember. And I remember just off of the top of my head asking you, was there anything about this? Was there anything about that? And then we looked at the exam guide. And at that time, at our previous home, back when you lived with us, I had a home office there and had a large marker board. And we did just fill that up with content then to go and refresh the memory and to go and investigate further and study and prepare. So you passed the second time. And I remember that was during that time where I think that certification was getting ready to be retired. And so I really was pushing you to get that certification because it had the word developer in it, you know. And then the ultimate goal, I think for you, because you are so technical and so gifted with coding as well, the ultimate goal became attaining the Developer 1 certification. So can you talk a little bit about your studies towards attaining that certification and where that fell into place?
Yeah, so in order to get that, I had to I think, do you have to, I don't remember if you need Platform App Builder as a prereq to Dev 1. You do not, anyways. I still wanted to transition that before, and I think I waited too long. I waited till like January 2017. So now if you look back at my, if you try to verify my certifications, it says I've been certified since January 2017 instead of 2015. But anywho, I remember just wanting to wait as long as I could to take the Dev 1. I didn't think I would be able to. I was really overestimating how difficult it would be. I kept pushing it off and pushing it off, and kept I would study, but I would also just like see 1 or 2 questions while I was studying and be like, I don't know if I'm ready to take this yet. And so I finally took it, I believe, in May of 2016, right as 2017, right as that first contract job was coming to a close. So it was good. It kind of helped get me to where I'm like, okay, I need to just hurry and take this. So I scheduled that, and then I remember it was our last day where we turned our laptops in at like noon or something, and then I took the test that afternoon, and then it was like, oh, this is a lot easier than I thought it was gonna, because I really over prepared for it. And so I got it, and I think I did a little bit of a brain dump, but not as much.
Right, because you passed, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you were trying to do a brain dump for your old man to help me out, you know. So I get it. All right, so you had the old Force.com developer certification. You attained Developer 1. In some point in there,
and the Platform App Builder.
App Builder. And then I guess the big kahuna for you, or the big challenge up until recently, was probably getting the Dev 2. So for those coding people that want to really bite off a lot, what was it like to attain the Developer 2 certification for you?
Yeah, so my strategy for the Dev 2 was, because you need to, they require you to get 4 Trailhead super badges and take the written exam. And honestly, I think that just ended up making it a little bit easier, just because I just treated those super badges as studying. So instead of doing a ton of traditional studying, I just created my own Trailhead trail, lined up all the individual badges up to the super badges, and then just did all those right in a row. Some of those super badges weren't really easy. Some of the lightning component ones, the super badge parts were a little bit of a challenge as far as getting all the different components in a page to work together and everything. But yeah, that definitely helped leading up to it. And then I took a couple practice exams, and then just went ahead and took it. And I believe I failed the first time, and then I think same story. I took it like a couple days or a week later, and I was able to pass it the second time. I can't remember. I think I did a bit of a brain dump after this one too, and just tried to study everything that I could that I didn't pass the first time, and I got it the second time. So.
And that was for the multiple choice exam then,
Yes.
for Dev 2. And
that's all. The super badges those are open book, so I guess you could cheat on those, but don't, because it's not, because then you won't pass the exam.
Right. Yeah, I think they built it that way so that they would take you across the knowledge that you need to know for the multiple choice stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like you would recommend for those wanting to do the Dev 2 to do those super badges first and then the multiple choice, or do you have to do it that way? Do you have to have the super badges before you can do the multiple choice, or could you do the inverse?
You could do either one. Yeah, the other reason I would recommend doing the super badges first is because you could pass the multiple choice and be like, yeah, I did it. And you're like, oh, I just got to do it's more climactic if you do the exam last. So
that's good advice. I like that.
Yeah.
All right. So you're now, I got to do the math because I have so many kids. I should know this. You're 23 years old. Is that okay if I share that publicly? I'm 50, so you're much younger than me. But so you've been at this now, I guess, legitimately about 5 years. And how do you feel as far as the decision to go this route, to forego college and to just dive in and go for it as a Salesforce developer?
Yeah, I have no regrets. This is there have been times, especially during while I was a contractor, where there were some days of just kind of not feeling like I had a lot to do, or just feeling like I'm just kind of floating around or whatever. But even those days, I would still, there would be times where I could go, oh, okay, well, I'm just gonna put that extra time or knowledge into learning more, or seeing where I lack so I can become more marketable and get just that much better of a job. And the job I have currently, I would say I have none of those issues at all. It's being a full-time developer for a healthcare company with all this work that they have lined up for me. It's even when they don't have any immediate needs, there's something else I can find to take care of, whether it just be with my process and how I'm developing and making sure that I have all my projects set up correctly and everything, so that everything can be done more efficiently, or just planning for future builds and things like that. So it's been good.
All right, awesome. All right, so I know that looking back on my own, I guess, course building career and creating courses related to Salesforce, first one that we released was around the administrator certification. And then the next course that I created was Platform App Builder. You're listed as one of the co-instructors of that because you helped in building some of the back end things. And specifically, if I remember correctly, because it's been a few years now, but you helped with the design and the layout of an IMDb clone app. That's Internet Movie Database, for those less initiated in not knowing what that is. And so that was really your first exposure with building a course related to Salesforce. And then since then, could you talk about your recent course release, what that is, and any other courses you have planned for the future?
Yeah, so I have released a Intro to Salesforce CX and VS Code course. I will be updating this course hopefully in the next couple months to give a little more context around kind of give a little more emphasis and context around why Salesforce CX is kind of a superior way to do Salesforce development, rather than just doing it all completely org-based, doing it more in a project-based offline capacity and then just deploying it to your different environments from there. But yeah, so the version 1, I guess, of that is out now. If you guys really want to get your feet wet with that, version 2 hopefully will be coming out later this year, and then hopefully we can be working on Dev 1 at some point soon together.
Yes.
Let's see how that goes.
Yeah, a lot of
forward-looking statement.
Right. Yeah. Don't make any future.
Don't make any purchase
decisions based on future looking statements. So
Yeah.
there has been a lot of requests for developer related courses, and I've seen some growing interest in Salesforce DX, kind of behind the scenes, some of the analytics that I've done, some of the certain individuals in the ecosystem that have recently enrolled in your course specifically, that kind of caught my attention. I'm like, that's interesting. So with that said, regardless of if you're a coder or not, a developer or more a consultant or business analyst, my view of where I sit, especially now with quarantine, stay-at-home measures, COVID-19, all of that, and I recently spoke about this in an interview that I did with someone else, a podcast where I appeared there. So we need to be looking for what is attainable and what is essential. Where is that intersection in finding our own space? And so, Anthony, you've done a great job in learning how to create and doing that through code. And so I want to commend you for just a great job that you're doing in life. You're crushing it. And of course, I'm proud as a father, but also just cheering you on at all times. And just you've always been one to, I guess, put into practice the direction that you're given, and you've seen that is borne out in good results as well. And so what is next for you? You talked about some of the courses you hope to put out. Any other aspirations, goals, certifications, things you want to learn, Salesforce or not?
So yeah, definitely wanting to hopefully get those courses out soon. Definitely wanting to, the company I'm with now, hoping to kind of stay there and hopefully grow within it and be a little bit more, hopefully grow into more of a lead type developer one day. So maybe doing something like that in some sort of capacity. I do have a kind of app exchange idea that I'm kind of working on, so hopefully can get that out soon at some point, maybe. Just kind of trying to fit in a little time here and there as I have free time on that. And yeah, that's kind of it. I guess the ultimate dream would be just like consulting company, but we'll see if that's even feasible down the line.
Okay.
I'm happy with where I'm at, if not.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, Anthony. Not sure how to sign off with this, but I love you.
Love you too. Couldn't have done without you.